Guys, it's Wade from 7 p.m. prayer in my dad's car. He's not driving right now and his car needs driven, so I'm driving it. And my truck, Monique, is getting a break. Ranger's not allowed in this car per dad, at least at this point. So anyway, it's just me. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the first chapter of James, where he's talking about asking for what you need in the way of faith and in the way of help. But that if you're someone who doubts and you're wishy-washy, then you're like a wave of the ocean that just goes here and there, and that person's not going to get wisdom or answered prayer from the Lord. So the importance there, because I think we all have times when we feel like, we're kind of doubting over something, we're uncertain. I think sometimes it's even just that we're uncertain of if what we're asking for is the correct thing to ask for. And that's something that is worthy of being doubtful of. I mean, the bottom line is that if all of our prayers get answered in the exact way that we ask them, and we ask them in the exact way that we want them to be answered, then our life of complete answered prayer is going to be at the total level of wisdom that we personally have. So when you look back on your life, I'm sure you're like me. There's things you can look at and say, that was wise. And there are things you can say, that was unwise. Well, if we're asking for good from God and we're wanting to carry that forward in our lives for ourselves and others, then we're seeking His level of wisdom, not our level of wisdom. So it's okay to put your faith in God's wisdom and not exactly your level of wisdom in the moment that you ask for a particular thing. The sketchy part becomes when you put that prayer out to God and then you start worrying about it and you start worrying about it and you start not knowing. Now is when all of a sudden it's kind of like God saying, not interested. And you can see it. I remember one time thinking this through in my mind. I kind of thought of it like if someone asked me to, let's just say someone went on a trip and they wanted me to take care of their pet for them. And I said, all right, sure. So then, they leave on their trip and 10 minutes into it, I get a call from them and they're like, hey, is, Spot okay? Yeah, sure. I told you I'd watch out for Spot while you were gone. Okay, great. Just making sure. 15 minutes later, call again. Hey, Spot okay? Everything all right? Yeah, I said I would take care of Spot, After a few of these, you'd get to the point where you're like, come get your dog. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And it's not because of them asking, it's because of them not obviously believing. And so when you look at God, if you're putting something out to Him and then you're fretting and you're asking because you're fretting and you're asking because you're fretting, then now all of a sudden you put God in a position of saying, you don't believe I can do this. You're just putting it out there because maybe the Bible says you should put it out there, but you don't actually have the faith that I'm going to be able to knock this out. So it's important that when you ask something, you put it on God's plate. Doesn't mean you're not going to be taking any action, because in many cases, God's going to use you as the instrument of action. But the bottom line is that, if you can't trust God and you ask something, then the action plan is probably not going to be of God's making. So really important to do what you need to do internally to get yourself in a position of believing God, because we've all had prayers that we asked for a certain way and we saw in the end, thank goodness, God didn't answer that prayer the way I had requested Him to do it, because it would have been a disaster. So we ask our prayers in faith of God's level of wisdom, not ours. All right, you guys, pray with me tonight at 7 p.m. want to get all the Christians together praying about it. There's a lot going on in the world. We need to be praying about it together, putting that power to work. I appreciate you guys.